Bengals at the Bills, and take a look at the betting that we currently have it at matchbook.com. You can back the Bengals at 3.05, Bills 1.44. The Bengals are getting a 5.5 point head start at 1.98. The total is 49. Drew, I'll hand over to you this one. I know you like a total, but just quickly on the point spread there in Bengals plus 5.5. Geez, a few weeks ago I would have really fancied Bengals to beat the Bills, but it's particularly last week, their performance just isn't up to the standard maybe that Bills are at the moment.
Yeah, and I think if I had to take a side, I'm taking the Bengals. And if I'm taking the Bengals, I'm inclined to back the money line. I don't really care about the 5.5. I mean, yeah, you're outside of 3, but if you're backing the Bengals, you're literally conceding the fact that their offensive line is going to get cooked in this game, but it's not going to matter. Right? Like that's kind of the thesis you have to go into this game if you're going to bet the Bengals. Joe Burrow obviously has survived to this point in his career under massive amounts of duress. He's taken 3, 4, 5 sacks a game. Hasn't really impacted their ability to ultimately sustain drives and still score and still threaten other good teams. Their playoff run last year, but he gets sacked 9 times in the divisional round against the Tennessee Titans, and they still win. So it's like, there's certainly you're conceding the fact that he's going to be under significant duress in this game if you're backing the Bengals. But I think that really plays to just sort of what the game state may look like. Bills pass rush is good, not great. Bills secondary, I have huge questions about, particularly, CB2, particularly the play you're getting from your safety not named Poyer. This is, there's relatively soft places to attack. And you may have to develop a little bit of a quick game, get the ball out of your hand more quickly than you would like to otherwise, as opposed to letting Jamar Chase just beat guys over the head down the field, letting Higgins beat CB2, down the field or over the middle of the field. But I still think ultimately Bengals, are realistically, we're talking about 21, 24 points for them as a squad. And then similarly, the Bills going up against a well-coordinated defense for, Lou Anarumo, huge amount of respect for him, particularly in-game adjustments he has made. And I don't really know what's going on with the Bills' offensive game planning. It feels like there's sort of a little bit of maybe last year in that playoff run. Josh Allen had enough respect for Dable that he was sort of listening to him and taking coaching and taking guidance, and that got the best out of him. And now, for whatever reason, Dorsey can't get through to him in the same way, and Josh Allen is not necessarily managing the game anywhere close to the level that he was in last year's playoff run. And so if their Bills are stubbing their own toe here offensively, then I think realistically this is going to be a very, very closely contested game, field position, field goals, that sort of thing. And then you throw the weather on top of it, which looks absolutely horrific. Conditions almost identical to what we saw in the second game between the Bills and the New York Jets. And if you remember that game well, Bills really had, very little opportunities to move the ball going up against a similarly talented defense. I in fact, I rate the Bengals with a better secondary, particularly in terms of safety play. So, I think realistically, this is going to be a lower scoring contest. You've seen the total come crashing down from 50.5 to 48.5. I think there's still meat on the bone at 48.5. My fare here would be 47. And I'm not even really a weather guy. I don't really know exactly how you perfectly incorporate the weather into this handicap. I just know that, this could get ugly early, particularly if it is as rainy and as kind of in that mix, wintry mix temperature as instead of just true snow. So we could be in store for an ugly game. And even if you're if the conceit of Joe Burrow can survive the B team offensive line is wrong, then this is even more tilted, in my opinion, towards the under. So I don't think either running game has a ton of potential here to really kind of help sustain drives in these conditions. So realistically, I don't see a better way to attack what would otherwise be a very fun game.
Yeah, well, the total's actually gone ticked a little bit back up, Drew, to 49.0 currently in Matchbook 1.92. So that's a pretty good case for that. Rob, over to you. And Drew touched on the stat. I wanted to bring up the 9-time sack, a playoff record for the Bengals, and they still won. Joe Burrow is going to be under massive, massive pressure in this game.
He will be, but at this point, this is not new information that the market hasn't accounted for, right? And that's the difference. Everyone who handicaps this game is going to talk about the Bengals injuries on the offensive line. And we know what they are. Starting left tackle, right guard, starting right tackle, all out of the game. 3/5 of their starting offensive line is an issue. The question is whether the market has accurately accounted for that. You can like Buffalo and you can say, I think that these players are actually worth a lot more than the market has accounted for. You could like Cincinnati and say the complete opposite. For me, it's a small lean to the Bengals here. And believe me, offensive line injuries, cluster offensive line injuries are a huge problem. But I have some optimism that the Bengals can overcome that for a couple reasons. One, the receivers can win on the outside. They have 3 very good receivers that can win immediately at the line of scrimmage right away. That allows for Joe Burrow to get the ball out of his hands a lot quicker. He was one of the quarterbacks in the league. I believe he was top 3 in terms of the amount of seconds it took him to throw the ball this year. The second reason I really like them is because the Bills play a lot of packages on defense where they have a ton of defensive backs in there. They play a lot of 5+ DBs on the field. They did that at a high rate this regular season, and Cincinnati was 3rd best in the entire league in attacking defenses that have 5 or more defensive backs on the field. Part of the reason why was not explosive plays, but because they had a very high success rate, 46.4%. They were taking everything that they could get underneath. And I think the Bills are a type of defense where you can methodically move the ball down the field against them. I mean, could this end up being a blowout and the Bills defense is just way too much for the Bengals offense? Absolutely, it can be. But in my opinion, I think the market has possibly over-adjusted a little bit for the injuries on the offensive line. And frankly, the thought of getting 5.5 points with Joe Burrow is extremely appealing to me as well. It's very rare that you get elite quarterbacks in this price range. And I know it's not just Joe Burrow. There's more than that. But the guy is just, he's a covering machine for the most part. So strong lean Bengals for me. At 6, I would 100% absolutely sign up to play Cincinnati. No shout of a doubt. In this kind of dead range here, I'm not so eager, but it would be Cincy or nothing for me.
Okay, so maybe if you're listening Saturday, Sunday, that line could move either way. Keep an eye on the markets on Matchbook. Suma, with the Bills and the Chiefs, they've been kind of vying for favoritism with the Super Bowl all year. So the Chiefs are 4.2, the Bills are 4.7. And I guess based on strength of opponent, the market has them pretty much similar, I'm guessing here, in terms of a Super Bowl, just based on the points. But with Bills here this week, you do think this is actually a tough matchup for them against the Bengals?
First of all, can you show the last comment, please?
Yes.
I want Rob to comment on that.
Okay, let me have a look here now. Okay, right. So it's a comment from Brad Moyer as Suma takes over the show. YouTube comment, Rob, what if Vegas knows with this Cincinnati line? Is it too good to be true, Rob?
Well, I mean, you have to ask yourself why only Vegas would know, right? And no, Matchbook apparently doesn't know. It's only Vegas that knows. Listen, I mean, I've heard a lot of talk about this week, and you typically, when you have a publicly backed underdog, an underdog that's very appealing for people, there's a percentage of the population that just stays clear of that because they think that there's some sort of information that Vegas has access to. Here's the reality of the situation, right? A lot of people bet Buffalo early. They took a stance and said, there's these offensive line injuries for Cincinnati. We think they're worth something. We're going to bet Buffalo. If they wanted to continue betting Buffalo and felt there was still value on Buffalo, more people would be doing that. That's not the case anymore. It's stuck where it is now. So anyone who thinks Vegas knows or wants to chase the number and say that Buffalo's the bet because of this action, at this point, the market is the market. It is what it is. Like the people who bet Buffalo early did it at vastly different numbers than what's there now. So that's the kind of stuff. I know Suma knows how to really he knows what's going to get to me. Bring in the comments. Vegas knows. Let's go.
If Vegas knew, they would have opened it at 5.5.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Great point.
Vegas hasn't a clue, really.
Yeah.
And do you not have a trend to support any of the Cincinnati support, Rob? The comment in here from Patrick.
I don't.
ATS record.
The Burrow lost against the spread last week, so we got to shelve one for a little bit, right? We don't want to bring that up. But Drew is on the scene in Orchard Park, New York right now, where he might be able to give us some weather trends or some sort of update on what it's going to look like there this weekend.
Nasty.
Suma.
It's going to be awful.
Suma, talk to me about these matchups here. Bengals at the Bills.
Yes, I completely agree with what Rob said. 6 would be the buy point for the Bengals. The market has also gone past my own number for this game, which is closer to 5. Yes, 6 is a buy point for Cincinnati. And we have talked so much about the offensive line this week and on this show already. I think there's another matchup which is in favor of the Bills, and that's Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis against Cam Taylor-Britt and Eli Apple. I think the Bengals have the biggest weakness at outside cornerback, and the Bills have 2 receivers. Yes, the fantasy community will say that Gabe Davis has been a major bust this year, but I think they have the 2 wide receivers who can actually win consistently against this Bengals secondary. And when the Bills try to find a way where they don't do some Josh Allen hero ball 20, 30-yard bombs down the field and just try to get more into rhythm, let him run the ball a little bit more, try to get some underneath passes, hit Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis on the outside. I don't think that the Bengals, even with some magic on the fly adjustments from Big Lou, will be able to contain the Bills offense for the most part. And then on the other side, yes, I think that the Bengals had a major issue last season against all these too high shell defenses. And what they did this year was adjusting to it by getting the ball out quickly, take all the underneath stuff, get their running backs involved in the passing game, let Jamar Chase run a few more in-breakers and not all these go routes anymore. And that has worked pretty well for them. And the Bills are exactly that kind of defense, pretty similar to the Ravens last week. The difference is that the Ravens blitz a little bit more and run a lot more simulated pressures, or these creeper pressures, and the Bills are a little bit more straightforward, a classic four-man rush, sound coverage behind that, closing on the ball quickly. And I think that the Bengals, like Rob has said, will be forced to move the ball that way, get all these quick underneath passes, show a lot of patience, and then try to execute in the red zone. This might work and could easily work, but then they also need their defense to step up and not let Josh Allen score too many points on them. Because even though the Bills' offense looked very, very sloppy last week against the Dolphins, they still somehow scored 34 points in a game which everyone who watched it said the Bills' offense was sloppy. And as soon as they turn it on, get a little bit more Josh Allen designed ones, and don't do too many YOLO balls on like 1st and 10 and stuff like that go to nowhere. I think that the Bengals defense doesn't have enough quality to simply contain that. So this game to me is game script dependent. If the Bengals can execute in the red zone and they don't, and they have a score where it doesn't get out of hand, where they have to chase any kind of score and the need to push the ball down the field against all these sound zone coverages of the Bills, then they would be in trouble. But as long as they can keep it close, I think they have a legit shot.